Of the many things that can be said of Dark Souls 1, the one I like the most is that it's a game about discovery. And of course, this isn't the only cool thing that it does. I think discovery and exploration are very heavily intertwined with the game's reputation for challenging players and pushing them to overcome difficulties. It's the reason why so many levels loop back on themselves to reveal a shortcut or enact some change in the environment that lets you see it in a new light. In the case of Dark Souls 1 and Elden Ring, this extends to the wider world around you and its structure. A jumbled mix of different levels and areas, puzzle pieces that seem segregated and detached until eventually the pieces fit together to form clarity, and suddenly the world feels bigger but less strange. Games like Outer Wilds take this a step further and center their entire game around player discovery, exploring, finding secrets, understanding the way the world turns, peeling back the veil. I can vividly remember exploring The Stranger, Outer Wilds DLC planet, and how cool it felt to make connections and think of ways to progress. The summation of this was discovering The Stranger's simulated world and its effects and simulation glitches that followed. For the former, it was one of my favorite moments of discovery through sheer intellect and genius on my part, and definitely not because I was an idiot and got extremely lucky. Here's what went down. I was already getting used to the time loops effects on The Stranger and the different locations I had to reach before the paths to them or the places themselves got destroyed. Some of these locations had these projector reels that seemed to show some kind of story.
Spotted homeless after gambling away all his possessions.
However, some of them were burnt, with a couple of slides missing as a result. But the most interesting part were these hidden rooms with a green fire and what appeared to be these creature statues forming a circle. This room was definitely important and there was definitely something to it. I just couldn't figure it out. Mad skill issue. And so begun countless loops of making my way to each of these rooms, failing a bunch, then wandering around trying to figure out what everything meant. I was becoming delirious, I was losing my mind, I began hearing voices, started listening to... Then I had the thought, what if all of this was intended? What if I was meant to feel useless, constantly looping again and again, gaining no insight with each run being interrupted by another giant wave crashing down, sweeping everything away, now I'm drowning and now I'm dead. But then I took a closer look and recognized these tiny metal lamps. I had seen one of these on my first time exploring The Stranger, but they restricted the use of my tools, so I left it and promptly forgot about it. So with this new brain blast, I took one of these metal lamps to the nearest fire room, only to get stuck again. So at this point, I was standing in the flame room wondering what to do next, and I was like, you know what, we're like halfway through the loop, might as well just meditate and reset the loop so I have more time to work this out. I closed my eyes, took a drink of water, and expected to see the familiar rewind screen. But then my eyes opened. The sounds were quiet, the room was dark, my spacesuit was gone, and a little flame had appeared in my lamp. This second world I had stumbled upon had different rules and mechanics with its own effects on the surface world. It really felt like peeling back a curtain and recontextualizing what I had already done. And eventually you'll learn of this world's hidden glitches and, quite literally, no-clip through the world and realize that we haven't hit the bottom yet. The layers kept on going. So how does this relate to Dark Souls? There's this part in Dark Souls 1 where you enter the depths, likely in a new player's first playthrough. As the name suggests, we are going pretty far down below Lordran. There are in fact a lot of stairs here. And where does it lead? To perhaps the game's most infamous area. You push through the doors, the light dims, you descend a long ladder and arrive at the peak of Blighttown. Yes, the peak. Now, Blighttown really represents your lowest point in the game. To match this, we have a poison swamp at the bottom, likely full of shit. We did just come out of the sewers after all. We then proceed to roll around in the poopy water, trying to dodge these giant guys who pelt you with massive balls of shit. And off to the side of the main path is a tree with a super shiny item, an illusory wall, a chest to distract you, and another illusory wall behind it, all leading to the Great Hollow. And can we acknowledge just how insane this is? We as players have gone through quite the ordeal to make it down here. The depths and Blighttown are likely huge jumps in difficulty for a lot of people, particularly with the introduction of poison and curse. We are very far from our home of Firelink Shrine, and the lack of fast travel means that once you're down here, turning back is far more difficult of an option. It is a pilgrimage in and of itself. Just when you thought the game couldn't go any deeper, it throws this secret area at you. And once you half climb, half fall down the Great Hollow, you are greeted with this. I know it may sound trite or hyperbolic, but this really made the game for me. Perhaps it's the proximity from Firelink Shrine, but finding Ash Lake really gave me a sense of discovery, like I was on a great adventure a long way from home. But more than that, it's Dark Souls 1's focus on world structure that really makes you start to wonder, wait, where are we? Picture it like this. The main path from Blighttown is through this cave, into the Demon Ruins, and into Lost Izalith. We are so far down here, it might as well be the game's representation of hell. But in terms of proximity, Ash Lake and Lost Izalith shouldn't be too far apart, right? Yet from the bottom of the Great Hollow, there is no sign of Izalith and its red hot lava anywhere. This is on a whole nother level, to the extent that some in the community have theorized Ash Lake as being a place connecting multiple different dimensions. But what does this say of our understanding of the world? There is certainly something strange and sinister here. It would be remiss of me to not mention how much its visuals and aura add to this unease. Its isolating murky waters and the uncertainty that comes of it, and the colossal scale of the distant trees stretching towards the horizon, all of comparable size to the one we just ascended. There's something incredibly striking about Ash Lake's appearance that stands in stark contrast to the rest of the game, despite its reputation for varied and grandiose locations. Ash Lake presents as a perversion of what we have come to know. It's a lake made from ash, the residue of fire. We are so far down as possibly conceivable, and yet there's what appears to be a second sky above us, Elden Ring can imagine. But that's all well and good. Why does this matter? Far be it for us in our very real life to really connect with the revelations of these fictional worlds. Why should we really care? Well, there is a through line to be made here. Stylistically, these inferences are almost clear opposites, yet thematically, they both deal with the idea of discovering some truth of the world, of unearthing something that redefines their understanding of a given space. And these are games that are heavily driven by player decision and autonomy. They are in part instances where each person has their own unique journey and experience. Not everyone will feel the same thing I feel when I stare out into the blurry distance of Ash Lake, or the serene emptiness of the night. But what does this all mean for us and our understanding of our own world? Would we be okay with something this astronomical, this world-defining, just being out there under our nose? In 1818, a man named John Cleves Sims sent out 500 copies of a pamphlet that read,
I declare the earth is hollow, inhabitable within, containing a number of solid concentric spheres, one within the other, and that it is open at the poles 12 or 16 degrees. I pledge my life in support of this truth, and am ready to explore the hollow, if the world will support and aid me in the undertaking.
This was met with ridicule and dismissed as mere distempered imagination. Even in our current era, Sim's idea that beneath the earth is a warm, rich land full of thrifty vegetables and animals is laughable at best. However, I can't say for certain that Sim's ideas were necessarily out of malice, ignorance, or some attempt at gaining fame, the same way we can see in some of the laughing stock of flat earthers. Sims took a lot of information to supplement his theory. These included encyclopedias, compilations of natural history and philosophy, but also accounts from explorers and travelers, atlases and geographies. Sims and his followers were large proponents for polar exploration due to his belief that the poles were the entryway to the Earth's center. I made the distinction between the hollow earth theory and the flat earth theory because flat earth theory is more focused on disproving common belief, almost like some conspiracy theory. Hollow earth, on the other hand, delved into the unknown and really appealed to people's imagination and sense of discovery. It is in this way like most fields of science. And here we have an instance of people wanting to discover some secret world right beneath us, even if it's an imaginary one. And I mean, can you really blame them? When me and my friends first played Valheim, we were sailing across the seas, staunchly convinced that we could one day stand atop the towering tree in the sky. Now, in hindsight, this is clearly just part of the skybox, but at the time we were full of wonderment and imagination in this new world. All we thought was, what if? But at the same time, people are right to be dismissive and skeptical at Sim's outlandish ideas. I, for one, do not believe in Hollow Earth, despite how interesting it is and how cool it'd be if it was real. And there is over 200 years of separation between our time and the time of the theory's conception. Imagine how the people of the time felt. It's crazy to think of the impact the Hollow Earth theory has had on popular culture. Alice in Wonderland and Journey to the Center of the Earth are examples of stories with this theory in mind, with varying degrees of relation. The latter of which I remember watching the 2008 film version, and even as a fantasy and horror game obsessed kid, dismissed the idea of the Earth housing a giant hidden world as mere conjecture and just fiction. Now, this isn't me being a super smart genius kid, more just the way I was brought up and educated. Do you know who was inspired by Hollow Earth? Edgar Allan Poe, whose story MS Found in a Bottle ends with the narrator and a ship reaching the South Pole, where it enters a clearing in the ice, is caught in a whirlpool, and sinks beneath the waves. And while it's quite a vague similarity, the story's end might suggest the narrator fell through the entry into the Hollow Earth. When talking about hidden civilizations and things beneath the earth, it's hard not to mention the works of Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Lovecraft's horror often involves the unveiling of some truth or horror, a realization so existentially horrific it often leads to madness. In his story At the Mountains of Madness, an expedition to Antarctica has resulted in the discovery of life forms unknown to science and an ancient city built by these creatures named the Elder Things, with the assistance of creatures called Shoggoths. At the climax of the story, the narrator discovers a subterranean region where the Elder Things eventually settled in, bringing with them their otherworldly architecture and engravings. In the story, and such is the case of many of Lovecraft's tales, these eldritch beings are presented to us in ruins. They are beings past their time. And it is admittedly a little unsettling to discover what led these civilizations with technological advancements magnitudes beyond our comprehension to meet such terrible fates. But with that in mind, perhaps it is a good thing that these beings of such power no longer exist. Much of Lovecraft's horror involves gods because they encompass a realm beyond our control.
Beginneth the chill night that encompasses all.
But to what extent does this separation apply to them? How much control do they have over us? It's one thing to have far-off civilizations lost to time, but what if these ancient beings have an unknowable impact on our lives, and we're just unaware of everything until they make themselves known, and we realize they were watching and pulling strings our entire lives? How do we know the influence they hold? How are we to know if they exist or not? Control, released in 2019 by Remedy Entertainment, is a pretty sick game with fun abilities, interesting enemies, and boss fights of an insane scale. But underneath all that, the game holds many of the aesthetics of Lovecraft stories that I enjoy. It may not have the most obvious connections, but the clearest place we can see this is in the setting itself. The game is confined to a singular building called the Oldest House, home to the Federal Bureau of Control, or FBC. It is in many ways far removed from any long-forgotten eldritch city, yet it exudes just as much strangeness and eeriness. a Goliath of a building able to shift beyond the confines of its walls, resulting in labyrinths of shifting rooms and spaces that defy logic. When describing the oldest house, it almost sounds as if the building is alive. It doesn't like being seen, and so it hides itself to anyone who isn't specifically looking for it. Our character Jesse becomes the director of the FBC at the beginning of the game, holding an immense amount of power and influence. But Jessie doesn't feel like the sole governing power of the FBC. She periodically communicates with an entity known as the Board, presented as this dark, upside-down pyramid. Despite its place as a guide and helping hand to Jessie, the Board always felt kind of sinister. Perhaps it's because so little is known about it or the astral plane that it resides in. The FBC focuses on both containment and research of these paranatural entities, so it is natural that many things are unknown, and this uncertainty extends to both their base of operations and the godlike entities that govern it. For how strange of a game Control is, my favorite part is comparatively bland. Towards the end of the game, you are brought to this elevator shaft, following breadcrumbs left by Artie the janitor. After dropping down a shaft, had some great hollow flashbacks, you arrive at what seems to be the bottom of the oldest house. Comparatively, this place is undeniably less interesting and exciting. It's absent of much of the shifting, bold colors and attention to detail present in the majority of the oldest house. In its place are rows of pillars, solid slabs of concrete, all repetitively equidistant, each one monolithic in scale. A bastion to architectural brutalism. In his article, The Brutalist Figure Grid, Jonathan Letzler describes brutalist architecture as characterized by the use of raw concrete or other exposed materials, employing geometric form and conveying a sense of massiveness. And the foundation really is everything described here. You'd scarcely find it anywhere else this stark, devoid of life, and of this magnitude. It is a more fitting match to the glimpse we see of the oldest house from the outside. It too exists as an imposing face of stone. There's something particular about this repeating pattern of pillars. True to its name, my first assumption was that this is the foundation of the oldest house. It would certainly justify its scale and location. Letzler describes structural integrity as a fundamental aspect of brutalism. He writes, "The utilization of repetitive patterns and linear forms in brutalist architecture can create a feeling of order and structure. It aids in load distribution and reinforces stability." How do you maintain structural integrity for a space that is both stupendously large and infinitesimally small? It is true that this repeating pattern of concrete pillars does create some semblance of order amongst the chaos that the game has been, but I don't know, there's something unsettling about this place that cuts through the solemn atmosphere. It feels sinister in the same way that Ash Lake made me feel. Both are situated in what we can assume is the bottom of the world. The distant trees in Ash Lake mirrored by these pillars, both seemingly holding up the world. But thematically, both hold implications of the origin of their worlds. They're different, but are inextricably linked to their worlds, resulting in this conflict of ideas. Both are very grand in scale, but are far off the beaten path, like some very important but well-kept secret. However, unlike Ash Lake, I don't think the foundation has an appearance that matches its importance. Jesse describes it as dark, quiet, transdimensional, kind of like a basement. If the oldest house really does stretch infinitely, the foundation would have to be just as infinitely large and endlessly adapt to the building's shifting spaces. It makes sense, but also doesn't. It's a contradiction that makes things hard to reconcile. Letzler later writes, "Despite the geometric clarity brought about by the coherent regime of orthogonal surfaces and grids, brutalism retains its essence by challenging perception to defy complete quantification and comprehension. Its appearance is a facade, orderly to hide the abnormal." In 1999, a little movie was released called The Matrix, and it was met with both critical and commercial success. Beyond the praise for its innovative visuals and special effects, it was probably the biggest introduction for many to the idea of a simulated reality. For those of you who don't know, this idea, proliferated in science fiction, revolves around its characters existing in a simulated copy of reality, usually without them knowing and with dubious implications. In the context of video games, we've seen it in Assassin's Creed, Soma, Sonic the Hedgehog, Danganronpa 2, and Prey. A simulated reality is a more literal version of discovering a hidden world beneath the surface, as we saw in Outer Wilds. And for all the cultural impact and influence the Matrix holds, there is a specific area that posterity has taken and reconstituted its ideas, synthesized with the morals and cultural complexities of our current epoch. Red-pilled alpha male bullshit. Now we can all sit back and laugh at the nonsense these people spout, something I'll have no reservation in doing. But I think there's a very interesting reason for this that ties everything together. Stagnation. I mean no disrespect for anyone's beliefs. If you have genuinely found improvement through the alpha male red pill idea, good for you. If you feel I'm being too disrespectful, then you can dismiss this as some random person's opinion. It should come as no surprise that the target of some of the most nefarious actors in this circle are people in incredibly vulnerable situations, people who are a little lost in life. The connection to the Matrix is important for its ideas of discovering our own subjugation, and the reason I think this rhetoric is used so often by the Eggman and others is because it exploits this want for change. With this need in mind for the people who fall victim to these schemes, they're looking for something world-defining, something to stir up the status quo, not for the world, but for themselves. In the opening lines of Control, Jesse talks about a room and a poster.
And there's a poster on the wall.
The room's a
So,
cell.
and the picture, it's different for each of us. It can be beautiful or terrible, but we're all transfixed. But it's all a lie. They're lying to us. We're lying to ourselves. The room's not the world. The world is much bigger and much stranger.
For Nia and Jesse, they pulled back the poster, and their lives were perpetually altered. A drastic change in worldview mirrored by a change in outlook, perspective, introspection. The difference is that Neo had a choice. Jesse did not, until now. In Dark Souls, there is no simulated reality, no one to provide our answers, no curtain to pull back that'll magically elicit change. I've mentioned how excited I was to find Ash Lake and how it felt eye-opening, like something was stirring here. But that boils down to the specific series of events that led me there. Our experiences are going to be different. Much of Dark Souls is unknown to us. We are kept in the dark, and so it falls on us to make our own inferences and discoveries. For us in Outer Wilds, we are stuck in a time loop. The world around us is stagnant. It progresses, but always in the same way. Nothing is going to change, well, except us. We aspire to find the truth and make discoveries because our actions have a clear quantifiable effect on both the world and our view of it. And this idea of being player-centric makes Outer Wilds very special to me. There's no one to make the discoveries for you. If we remain the same, just as stagnant, then things will never change. And the same can be said for you and me. There isn't some grand conspiracy that'll forever alter our lives, no hidden world beneath a giant tree that's going to uproot society. But there are always things to experience and discover. There is always a choice. And no magic pill will ever make that decision for you, no secret remedy that's going to magically reveal the truth. It's a choice you have to make, an expression of human autonomy. Alright, that was the video. Congratulations on getting through all of it. Sorry if this video was a bit hard to understand, or hard to keep up with. It is a bit out there, admittedly, especially with how it jumps from topic to topic. So hopefully in a way that felt connected and made sense to you all. A couple of things to get out of the way. Thank you to my friend Musa for providing narration around the midpoint of the video. I'm sure you heard it. It's a small part, but he did a fantastic job, and I just wanted to thank him. Yeah, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys later.